It's scary movie season. Well, for some diehard fans, that's every season. But one thing that horror film buffs and the casual movie-going crowd can agree on is that The Shining is arguably the best horror movie of all time. We've seen it so many times, it's basically a comfort movie at this point, based on the novel by prolific author Stephen King and adapted by the legendary Stanley Kubrick. The film stars the incredible Jack Nicholson delivering some of the most disturbing and intense acting ever put to celluloid. What more can we say about The Shining that hasn't already been said? Fast forward nearly 40 years later to 2019, Dr. Sleep hit theaters but underperformed at the box office. The long-awaited sequel to The Shining, based on the 2013 novel of the same name, stars Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, Ewan McGregor, playing adult Danny Torrance. The follow-up focuses on Danny dealing with the aftermath of the first movie's events while protecting teenage girl Abra, who possesses the power to shine from the evil monsters of the True Knot led by Rose the Hat. In this modern age of legacy sequels, Dr. Sleep fared very well critically and currently has a fresh rating over on those tomatoes that are rotten. But which of these Stephen King adaptations shines the brightest? That's right, grab your axe and pour yourself a glass of red rum, because it's time to shine.
Face off!
Disclaimer. No actual science was used to determine the outcome of Face Off. Your results may vary. Please do not consume Face Off if you are allergic to conjecture, opinion, or general nonsense.
Round 1. Unsettling setting.
Throughout the history of horror, the most important element outside of the antagonist is its setting. Whether it's the Bates Motel or Camp Crystal Lake, it's all about location, location, location. So which of these supernatural settings draws first blood? The Shining is remembered heavily for its setting at the extremely isolated Overlook Hotel. Fun fact, the exterior of the hotel was shot at the Timberline Lodge at Mount Hood in Oregon. What more is there to say? Everything from that obscene carpet, the elevator unleashing a torrent of blood, room fucking 237, and the hedge maze. As Jack Nicholson descends into madness, we feel we're going insane right along with him. On the flip side, the majority of Dr. Sleep is set in New Hampshire, which is a far cry from the isolated Colorado Rockies. The story's setting is actually more sprawling as we bounce around parts of the country following Danny, Rose the Hat, and Abra. At least for the climax, we return to the Overlook Hotel, which is still standing here, unlike the source material since it burned down at the end of King's original novel for The Shining. That being said, this is an easy one. The Shining strikes first. Verdict? The Shining.
Just gonna bash your brains.
Play with us, Daddy.
Round 2. Scary story.
No one tells better terrifying tales than the horror king himself, Stephen King. As the story goes for The Shining, Jack Torrance is a writer with a bit of a drinking problem who accepts the opportunity to become the caretaker of the Overlook Hotel in the Rocky Mountains, a hotel that happens to be haunted as fuck. Jack brings his wife Wendy and his son Danny along for the ride as Jack himself slowly starts to go batshit crazy, all thanks to the sinister forces that occupy the place. Oh, and his son can shine, which is a fancier term for psychic abilities. Kind of like Professor X, except way creepier. And the story for Dr. Sleep is criminally underrated. About 40 years later, after the events of The Shining, middle-aged Danny Torrance struggles with alcohol himself to suppress his shining ability. Like father, like son. After moving to New Hampshire and going through AA as a fresh start, Danny begins working at a hospice and uses his ability to help the patients cross over to the other side. Hence the nickname Dr. Sleep. Meanwhile, Dick Halloran appears to Danny and begs him to help the teenage Abra, who has the same ability to shine as well, as she's being hunted by Rose the Hat, who feeds on young children that shine. So what we have here is a classic horror story that stands the test of time, as well as a brilliant and underappreciated follow-up story that exceeds expectations. But to us, this is when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. So we're calling this round a draw. Verdict: draw.
Just gonna bash your brains.
Play with us, Daddy.
Round 3. Dark direction.
This may be a lopsided round, but it most certainly has to be addressed. The Shining was directed by the legendary Stanley Kubrick, who also produced and co-wrote the film. And what has been said that hasn't been said already? The standouts, such as the use of the groundbreaking Steadicam, the iconic shots of pure terror, and the absolute top-notch performances from his entire cast. The last part is somewhat controversial since Kubrick pushed his cast extremely hard to get the best out of them, particularly Shelley Duvall, whose hair was falling out during production. However, it's interesting to note that Kubrick protected Danny Lloyd, who played little Danny Torrance, by having him believe they were shooting a drama, not a horror film. Director Mike Flanagan was given one of the most daunting tasks in horror movie history. How on earth do you fill in the shoes of the great Stanley Kubrick, direct a sequel to one of the greatest horror films of all time, and respect King's novel on top of all that? Given all that, Flanagan still managed to pull it off. He even recreated some iconic shots from The Shining in the climax of the film. And at the end of the day, even though King is not a fan of the film himself, Kubrick's direction is unmatched and completely owns this round. Verdict: The Shining.
Just gonna bash your brains.
Come play with us, Daddy.
Round 4, Menacing Monsters.
Monsters, ghosts, supernatural forces, living nightmares. What makes this Shining duology stand out from every other horror flick and thriller are the monsters that wreak havoc on our protagonists. So let's compare these freaks to see who takes the cake this round. In The Shining, there are a bunch of haunted beings that lurk in the Overlook Hotel. We at our cores shaken by the freaky twins that Danny bumps into. I mean, Jesus Christ on ice skates, look at them! Pure nightmare fuel. And in some twisted way, we're kind of charmed by Lloyd the bartender because, come on, he's fucking awesome. Then there's the dog man. What the hell is his deal? Your guess is as good as ours. And talk about going northbound to straight up disturbing shit when Jack meets the woman in room 237. Yikes. We totally feel Jack's reaction. Bottom line, these freaks haunted us for years and are still embedded in pop culture to this day. Although nowhere near as frightening as the monsters of the Overlook, the monsters of the True Knot are chillingly memorable and elevate Dr. Sleep into a wild good time. Led by Rose the Hat, portrayed by the beautiful Rebecca Ferguson, they are nearly immortal freaks who have been walking the earth for ages, hunting children who shine like vampires to blood. Some of the members include Crow Daddy, Rose's lover and right-hand man, Grandpa Jonas Flick, the oldest member of the group who's been alive since the Roman Empire, Barry, whose main ability is to locate the children who have the power to shine, and Snakebite Andy, who takes much pleasure in killing and mutilating men. Man, that's a pretty twisted and naughty crew. Look, we understand they're not as iconic as the monsters of the Overlook, but they certainly carry the movie. As we watch them fiendishly hunt, we root hard for Danny and Abra to take their asses out. This may be contentious, but we're chalking up this round as a draw. Verdict: draw.
Just gonna bash your brains.
Come play with us, Daddy.
Round 5, Creepy Cast.
The Shining has a commanding lead in this face-off, but can Dr. Sleep's resiliency make this a closer match? Let's take a closer look at these all-star casts that make these movies goated material. Not many horror flicks have stacked casts, but The Shining totally does. Shelley Duvall really displays sheer terror as she fights for her life as Wendy Torrance. Fun fact, Stephen King originally wanted Jessica Lange for the role. Can you imagine getting chased by King Kong and by Jack Nicholson? Anyway, Danny Lloyd did wonders for the role of young Danny Torrance, and other standouts include Scatman Crothers as Dick Halloran, and we are still pissed that he got the axe, literally. Joe Turkel as our favorite bartender Lloyd, all anchored by the performance of a lifetime by Jack fucking Nicholson, who delivers perhaps the single best performance in cinematic horror history. Another quick note here, Robert De Niro was considered for the part too. As much as we love De Niro, thank God for Nicholson, he's a revelation here. Dr. Sleep boasts a fantastic cast as well, with promising young actress Kylie Kieran as Abra Stone, with support from Carl Strucken, who you'll recognize from the 90s Addams Family movies, Robert Longstreet, the incredible Zahn McClarnon, Emily Allen Lind, and rounding out the True Knot group is Rebecca Ferguson. The talented Jacob Tremblay plays a minor role as Bradley Trevor, one of the poor victims of the True Knot. The entire cast is spearheaded by a magnificent Ewan McGregor playing the role of an older, traumatized Danny Torrance. Oh, and spoiler alert, we have to mention E.T.'s Henry Thomas taking on the role of Jack Torrance, who's now the bartender at the Overlook Hotel. Quite a sight to behold, really. But at the end of the day, both movies contain amazing actors that bring these characters and stories to life. But there's one difference maker here, and that is Jack Nicholson delivering a career-defining performance. And when Jack is at his fucking best, nothing and no one can touch him. So once again, winner of this round and overall face-off is The Shining. Shine on, motherfuckers!
Just gonna bash your brains.
Come play with us, Daddy.
Look, Dr. Sleep had quite the uphill battle with this one, but by no means do not dismiss this fantastic sequel. If you haven't seen this movie, stop what you're doing and go watch it right now. Both the theatrical cut and the director's cut are intriguing viewings. If you happen not to like it, you should give it another chance, because there's a lot to appreciate here, whether you're a fan of the original Kubrick film or King's source novel. The movie manages to respect both the original film and King's writing, but obviously Kubrick's The Shining is on a whole other level. The atmosphere is unforgettable, the haunting images stick with you, we root for these characters, and to this day, people are still dissecting and debating every single frame of this masterpiece. Documentaries on this film are being produced, and The Shining has shaped our pop culture, especially around Halloween. Shout out to The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Who knows, maybe with some time and some retrospection, Dr. Sleep might enjoy the longevity that The Shining does. But for now, let us know in the comments which of these two films shine brightest for you, The Shining or Dr. Sleep. And as always, thanks for watching.